Imagine it's the early 1920s. Bacteria has been discovered, and thanks to Pasteur's research, we now know that most bacteria are responsible for the infections and illnesses that occur today. Well, unfortunately, we don't know how to combat these bacterial infections at the time. And you happen to get one of them. And you die. Flash forward to today though. Get the same bacterial infection. You go to the doctor. He prescribes you antibiotics. You start taking them right away because you're a good patient, right? And you start to feel better. So, who do we thank for these antibiotics? The answer is Alexander Fleming. In 1928, Alexander Fleming was looking for a wonder drug to kill bacteria, because at the time, nobody knew. So, he would go and load numerous amounts of petri dishes with bacteria. Unfortunately, these petri dishes all became contaminated, and so Fleming had to scratch the work. So he dumped them all into a Lysol bath. But there were so many that the ones on top couldn't reach the Lysol bath and remained contaminated. This ended up being a good thing though. He didn't know it at the time, but it was. Weeks go by, and Alexander Fleming's old assistant comes in, and he tries to guilt trip him. He's like, look at all my petri dishes I have to deal with here, man. The ones on top, they weren't getting clean. So Fleming looked at them, and he saw a mold on them. Now this mold caught his eye for one reason only. It was killing the bacteria. This bacteria, scratch that. It was killing the bacteria. This was what Fleming was looking for. This was his wonder drug. But now the question was, what was this mold? It just so happened though that right beneath him was C.J. Latouche, who was a mold expert. So one day Latouche comes up into Fleming's lab, takes a look at the mold, he's like, I know exactly what that is. You're dealing with penicillium. So, now Fleming knew what the mold was and what it did. He had two questions though. How? How did it get on those petri dishes? The answer was, Latouche was dealing with some penicillium mold down in his lab, and some of it might have went airborne and ended up traveling up into Fleming's lab and landing right in the petri dishes and allowing it to grow. The second question he had was, how do I make this into a drug that could be used by humans to combat bacteria? Unfortunately, a brilliant man Fleming was, but he didn't have the chemical understanding of how to break down the mold into a usable drug. So instead, he wrote about his findings, and they sat for 12 years. World War II now. Bacterial infections everywhere in the war. So, it was one of the main things was how to treat these bacterial infections. Two Oxford students by the names of Howard Florey and Ernst Chain took upon the task. And the first thing they did was looked into old documents, maybe to find something that had been missed. And they happened upon Fleming's documents. Now, Fleming's documents. They found penicillium. It came back. And these guys knew how to break down that mold into a usable drug, and were able to create the drug we know today as penicillin. Now, this led to what we now have as numerous amounts of the antibiotics that we use today. So thanks to these three men, we're all alive today.